This week we're going to finish up the story of Joseph. I'm going to pick us up in chapter 47. I'm going to read the first 11 verses, and then I'm going to jump ahead to chapter 50 and read verses 15 through 19. The reason I'm going to do that is because basically most of chapter 47, 48, and 49 are just an historical account of the remaining 5 years of the famine. Remember in chapter 46, Jacob and his family, Joseph's father, uh, left Canaan and they joined him in Egypt. And after he got the news that Joseph was still alive. So the family was apart for almost 30 years. It was shattered. It was broken apart because of the sin that the brothers did, because they were jealous. And remember, through the whole story, we saw a series of circumstances that God put before the family so that they would be eventually reunited. So let's pick up in chapter 47, verses 1 through 11. So Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My fathers and brothers, with their flocks and herds and everything they own, have come from the land of Canaan and are now in Goshen." He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked his brothers, "What is your occupation?" "Your servants are shepherds," they replied to Pharaoh, "just as our fathers were." They also said to him, "We have come to live here for a while because the famine is severe in Canaan and your servants' flocks have no pasture. So now please let your servants settle in Goshen." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your fathers and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen. And if you know of any among them with special ability, put them in charge of my own livestock." Then Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramses, as Pharaoh directed. Joseph also provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food according to the number of their children. So what you have here is after the families reunited and Jacob is going to settle in Goshen with his family, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, gives him the best. This is all God's provision. God provided for them because Joseph had the faith in God and trusted God to take care of him and to lead him, that God rewarded him and his family with the best that there was in Egypt. Remember, Egypt was the predominant country at that time. So God provided and gave them the best. So what happens towards the end of chapter 49 is Jacob dies. Joseph's father dies. And in the beginning of chapter 50, they have a funeral for him that lasts 7 days. So we're going to pick up here in chapter 50 and see how the brothers are going to react. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended harm for me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. This whole thing started when the brothers became jealous of Joseph because he had a dream that one day they would bow down to him. And because Joseph was favored by his father Jacob, remember Jacob had 2 wives, and he had more than all of his brothers were from the other wives, with the exception of Benjamin. So the brothers were jealous, and they sold Jacob to the Ishmaelites. And the Ishmaelites, in turn, sold Joseph to the Egyptians. And because Joseph had favor with God, because he trusted God, God put Joseph in charge of Potiphar's household. Remember, he was the prison guard. Then, through a series of circumstances, Joseph became in charge of Pharaoh's household. This was all set up by God because Joseph trusted him. And the reason that God did this was because you have to go back to Jacob's father and grandfather, Abraham, his grandfather, and Isaac, his father. God made them promises that their descendants would become the great nation of Israel, because Israel would bear the Messiah, Jesus. So God had to provide for them so that he could sustain Israel, so that Israel could grow. God did all this for his purpose. He did all of these things so that his people could prosper. And God offers the same thing to us. When we trust him, when we let him give us direction, when we let him lead our lives, God will take care of us. He's proven it time and time again. There are many other stories in the Bible that God has provided for people, and we're going to get to those eventually. But you have to remember, you have to trust God. He exists. He loves you. He wants to take care of you. He wants the best for you. Remember, the running theme through this whole story has been from the New Testament, Romans 8:28. He causes all things to work out for the good to those that love him and are called according to his purpose. Remember, last week I said you were called according to his purpose. God's intention is that for everyone to be saved. Everyone he who is created, he wants to be with him for eternity. That's God's plan. And that's his purpose. And he's calling you for that purpose. So, I won't say your life will be easier. But what I will say is that your life will become more meaningful, and it will have a purpose, and it will progress. And it'll progress the way God wants it to. And he wants to show you that he has the best for you. I want you to consider opening yourself up to God, trusting him, letting him take care of you. You saw it in this story. God took care of Joseph, who in turn took care of his family, who in turn took care of all of Egypt. And from that, the nation of Israel was born and grew. And because of that, we have the Messiah. We have Jesus to take care of us. Next week, I'm going to have a little bit of a transition. So I'll see you then.